Here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to let people get settled. We still have quite a few people coming in to the webinar, so we'll just get started here in a couple minutes. All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We still have some people trickling in, but we'll kick things off. Thank you guys for joining us today for our What's New in Trifacta Winter 2021 release. Our theme for this release is Let's Connect, and you'll see why here in a couple minutes. Just a few quick housekeeping things. This session is being recorded. So we will have this available on demand. It's probably going to be readily available on our YouTube channel, and we'll also email it out to all the participants as well. So if one of your questions is going to be, will you be able to share the recording of this or the presentation? The answer is yes, because that's always a question right at the top, and I put it in the chat for everybody, so hopefully you can relax and just watch the presentation and not have to worry about that, because you will get it and you'll be able to share it with your colleagues and have this in perpetuity. The other thing is you will have the opportunity to answer, ask questions and get answers. So somewhere in the Zoom, I believe it's at the top, you will see a Q&A section. If you click that, you'll be able to type questions directly into that box, and we can either answer them in the chat directly, or we'll save some till the end. We have a specific Q&A section. If we don't happen to get to your answer, if we don't happen to answer your question, we will have a member of our team follow up with you since you registered for this event. And as long as you gave us the correct contact information, we'll be able to get back to you. I think that is it for the housekeeping stuff. So just to give you a quick insights into who our speakers are today, I am Matt Durda. I'm a senior product and customer marketing manager at Trifacta. We have Connor Carreras, who's director of SaaS adoption and enablement, and then Lou Nee, who's the director of technical enablement and education. Both of us have been at Trifacta for quite a while. I think I've been at Trifacta 5 years, and Connor and Lou have been here longer than me. So we're all pretty ingrained in Trifacta, and already we have a great question. When is the next cool Trifacta t-shirt being released? Probably very soon. That's a great question to start us off. I like that. Thank you, Shane Gibson. All right, here's a quick overview of what we're going to cover now. Just to give an update on how this is going to work, we're not going to be able to cover every single feature that is in this release. It's just too much to go over, so we're just going over some of the things that are the highlights. We're going to show you how you can find out more about the product and give you some insights how to get details on all of the new features. But these are probably the ones that are of most interest. If you are on like a SaaS version of Trifacta, this encompasses the last few months of release, because we update the product every month. If you're on the enterprise version, this is the 8.1 release, which is going to be available soon. So a little bit of something for everybody. So we're going to go over connectivity. We have a lot of new connections and some other big news for you in that regards. Plans. We have some sharing capabilities and other orchestration capabilities that we've built in. This is in addition to an existing functionality. We have some updates in doing some data quality, some aggregate comparisons. You also have some great collaborative functionality, which is a huge necessity in a lot of organizations when you're in a workspace of flagging steps for review, and how you can kind of use that for templates and things of that nature when working in a team. We have some updates to our macros as well. And then the last thing we're going to touch on is our Photon execution engine, which is going to have a significant improvement on your performance. Once again, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put those in the Q&A box, and we will answer them at the end. One other big thing, if you haven't seen this yet, in April, we are hosting the first ever Gaggle Summit, which is an industry event focused on data engineering. Registration is free. You just go to wranglesummit.com. You'll also be able to get there from trifacta.com as well. But we've got some incredible speakers. We have the founder of Snowflake. We have people from Databricks, and a lot of great sessions from companies like Eli Lilly. What else? We've got a panel discussion from infectious diseases from the CDC, genomics, and the Infectious Disease Observatory at the University of Oxford. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of learning, and there's a lot of things to check out. And also there's going to be a day 3 where our customer success team is going to do a lot of like hands-on activities and community centered activities as well. And speaking of our community, one of the things that we're launching very soon around the time of the summit is going to be our Trifacta Community 2.0. So it's going to launch later this month. This is a quick preview of what it's going to look like. It's going to be really improved. So if you haven't yet, join the Trifacta community, and you'll see this coming pretty soon. But there's already great resources that we have there. You've got knowledge-based articles, discussion forums, documentation, so you can see everything related to all of the releases to date, and then user groups and training as well. This is where you can get your training and certification through the Trifacta community, which is something that Lou actually spearheads. So if you are not a member of the community, you're going to want to join this as it's going to be very, very helpful. And the other thing is, if you are new to Trifacta on this call and you haven't tried it yet, you have the chance to try a free trial. No matter what your underlying architecture is, you can go to trifacta.com, click start free, and you can spin up a trial instance that's got full functionality, and you can get your hands dirty and actually test out all of the features we're going to show you today. So you can actually try these out once we're done, if you haven't yet. All right, so I'm going to kick us off with connectivity. So we have some new connectors that we're introducing in this round of release. So in the 8.1 release, specifically, we have MongoDB, Mongo Atlas, SharePoint lists, and OAuth 2 support for Snowflake and Salesforce connections. The other thing, we're also introducing early preview of Google Analytics, Cassandra DB, Airtable, Freshdesk, and something that probably a lot of people are familiar with is MailChimp. And this is actually the start of something that we're kicking off. We're going to release a lot of new connectors over the coming months, actually a ton of new connectors. So if you're interested in learning more about those, definitely join the Gaggle Summit, because you're probably going to get a sneak preview into some of those new connections that are going to be coming out very, very soon. So that's another reason why you should attend the Gaggle Summit. But also, just to touch on the early preview connectors, this is something brand new that we're rolling out. We want users to start trying these out and testing them, and then also putting your use cases through these connections and giving you the ability to give us early feedback on those connections. So feel free to try these, test them out, and also connect with us and let us know how it's going. If you need a refresher, just one quick thing on how to establish the connection. So over here, when you're in the Trifacta interface, this is your connections tab. So if you click there, that'll show you all of the connections you have available. In this example, we're connecting to Snowflake. And then obviously, to create a new connection, you just click Create Connection, and you'll be able to see all the options from there. You may notice a slight update to the user interface for the connections as well. Here's a preview of what that looks like. And as I mentioned, this is just the beginning. So we're going to release more and more, a lot more coming up. So stay tuned, because you're going to get to see a lot of new functionality coming out of this. So it's pretty exciting. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Connor to take us through plans.
All right, thanks, Matt. So plans, if you're familiar with Trifacta, this is the functionality that allows you to orchestrate multiple flow tasks, schedule them, and really get a lot of value out of orchestrating your work. So not just the wrangling, but going a bit beyond wrangling and saying, well, now we want to take the data we've transformed and reuse it or automate it in some way. So we've added a ton of new functionality to plans over the last few months. I've listed them all here, but there's really 5 specific plan features that are super important that we want to dig into on this webinar. So the very first of these plan features that we want to talk about are parallel tasks. So in particular, parallel tasks, Matt, if you want to advance. There we go. They allow you to not just sequentially execute different flows and outputs, but run events in parallel. So this expands the complexity of the type of work that you can orchestrate inside Trifacta, because you're not just creating anymore a single list of tasks that need to execute one after another, but you can really start branching and chaining and building out complex dependencies based on the data that you are processing and what you want to output. So these are an enhancement to plans that we have been asked about a lot, and we're really excited that this is now available in the product. Another commonly asked for plan enhancement is around conditional execution. So traditionally, If you want to go ahead and advance again, there we go. Previously with our plans, we were getting a lot of questions from users like you guys saying, well, I want to be able to branch my tasks, maybe route my data somewhere else if the flow fails versus if the flow succeeds, or have a different path. Maybe we're sending a task or an email after the data completes successfully, but we're not doing that when there's a failure. And so we've incorporated conditional executions into plans now. And they give you this flexibility to build complex workflows and really let you determine exactly what happens to your data depending on the success or failure of the previous task. The next aspect of plans that we've enhanced are HTTP tasks. So we've had HTTP webhooks associated with individual flows for a while now. This essentially allows you to make an external API call after your flow has completed and perform some other action. We've now brought that functionality into plans. So this is something that I use a ton in my own Trifacta workflows and plans. So once your sequence of events completes in this case, you can trigger external processes. Maybe you've got a machine learning pipeline that's built on the back of your Trifacta wrangling and you want to kick that off automatically. That is now possible. These are super flexible. Anything that can be triggered from an API call can now be added into a plan HTTP task. I think we lost the prezo, Matt. I can keep going, but I think you guys would probably like to see the slides. All right, awesome. Thanks, Matt. So the next enhancement to plans is around sharing. So we've added granular roles into plans. So what this means is that when you have other users inside your organization, you can determine if particular subsets of your population are allowed to edit, share, execute, only view plans, or can't use plans at all. So this allows you to serve different types of roles who might all be using Trifacta, but in slightly different ways, and have very specific control over what each of those types of users get to do inside Trifacta. And our last plan enhancement, this is another one I was super excited about, is around plan importing and exporting. So a lot of customers can have multiple environments. So this is more of a dev test prod type process. And what you can do now is export plans either from the UI or using our APIs, and potentially integrate them with an external version control system like Git, and then also re-import those plans into different environments. So we're giving you the same type of flexibility you have with flows around importing and exporting, but now taking that to the orchestration and automation framework of plans. So we're going to keep building out plan functionality in the coming months, because this is really an exciting area that allows you to get a lot more out of Trifacta and start building really complex workflows that drive your business. So I've put a bit more information. If you're interested in plans, we definitely encourage you to go into the community, just search for plans and you'll find a lot of great content. There's also some useful specific articles if you want to get some information about how to use plans for different types of use cases. And so that's all we've got about plans. Our next core feature, this is another area that has been receiving a lot of development in Trifacta. And this is our data quality rules functionality. So hopefully some of you have tried out data quality rules at some point. They allow you to build out different validations that are custom to you and your data, and then see how many of all of your records validate against those rules. This all occurs in the transformer grid. So you get a really agile experience where you see exactly how your data is working, what the quality of your data is as you're doing your development. We've enhanced that rules framework to include aggregate comparisons. You can do these in the data quality rules that are range, greater than, less than, equals, not equals, and then not in or in a set. So what this basically lets you do is if you've got groups, so thinking of our Gaggle Summit session around the infectious diseases, perhaps you want to validate if for different groups of patients, the average dosage is more than a particular amount, and that's your quality rule. You can now go in and build that type of comparison where you're looking across aggregate values and really start to do real nice, complex data quality validation work. So again, another area that is getting a lot of investment and that we're excited about. Lou's going to take you guys through the next couple of feature areas. We've got some other exciting enhancements here.
All right, thanks, Connor. Let me just quickly reorganize my UI here. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about a new feature that we have in this release, which is the flag steps for review. And this is a collaborative feature that we're releasing. So one of the main things that users have come to give us in terms of feedback is that, hey, this is a nice tool. I want this to be used across my organization, but sometimes some people are not as expert wranglers as I am, or vice versa. So what we've introduced is a new concept called flagging steps for review, which allows people to basically flag recipes and steps within those recipes for further review before execution can be done, or you can use this for like templating and basically sharing out knowledge within your organization. So what this essentially does is that you can tag specific steps within your recipe and flag it as a pending step. A pending step will basically prevent the recipe from executing. You can't run a job against it. All right, looks like the slides went back. Okay, there we go. And basically, you have to resolve a pending step before any action can be taken past that particular step. This is particularly useful if, let's say, I am designing a template flow where, let's say, I have a bunch of auditing tasks that I have to basically conduct on a monthly basis. And other people within my organization want to use a very similar flow, but they have to edit it so that they're targeting their specific accounts. They could copy over my recipe and then fix up certain steps and mark a particular step as resolved before allowing execution. So I have a couple of examples here on the next slide as to how this works. So as you can see here in this video, you can mark any step that you want as flag for review, and then you can enter a call to action within the description. And what this will do is it will prevent the rest of the recipe from basically triggering until somebody goes in and resolves it. This is very useful if you also need somebody to take a look at the code that you've developed and say, hey, I'm not quite sure if the logic is correct here. Why don't I share a copy of my flow with you, and then you can just take a look at what I marked here and basically give me some pointers as to how best to achieve this. Okay, so that's creation. In terms of on the other side, the person that gets shared with the flow, they are able to come into the particular flow and say, mark a particular step as resolved. They can edit the step if needed, or send it back and say, hey, I think this looks better if you did this, something to that effect. Anything with a flagged step is going to be marked in the recipe as well as the flow, so that that there's something to resolve here. And also, if you notice on the top right there, the run button is actually grayed out until these steps are resolved, which prevents people from accidentally triggering a job where this has not been tested or reviewed before sending it to production. This is a really cool new feature that we've put in that would hopefully help you turn this wrangling into a more collaborative experience. And then the next one that I want to talk about are macros. If you have played with Trifacta before, you'll know that we introduced macros as part of our last release. Macros are essentially scriptlets or basically snippets of reusable code and recipe steps within Trifacta. And you can use macros to basically create like reusable steps that are packaged that you can share across your organization. And in our first iteration, we gave you the ability to just create and apply macros. But as we build this out, we've started giving you the ability to update and replace these macros as well, so that if you decide you want to make a change to some of the macros, some logic needs to be updated, you can now go ahead and update those macros as you see fit. So within the new release, you're able to now edit the name, description, and even the logic within the macros itself. And you're also able to kind of remap macros if you import them from another source. So on the next slide here, I have an example of what this looks like. So here we have a recipe that already has a macro defined. The very first example here is just editing the macros directly to update the description and the parameters that are inside of this macro. You can do this directly from the recipe, just like how you are creating the macros initially, just by right-clicking and hitting edit, and then you can go in there and make any changes that you need to do. On the next slide here, you will see how we can replace existing macros. So let's say the logic of your macro has changed. You now need to divide by 4 instead of divide by 5, something like that. You can also do those types of edits, or you can even like add additional steps to your macros. And what we allow you to do is to take a bunch of transformation steps and basically replace an existing macro. And we allow you to basically remap the inputs from the original macro to the new macro, which will allow you to keep all the logic intact. You don't have to worry about breaking existing macros or anything that has an existing macro applied. And then finally, you can, oops, it loaded too quick for me, Matt. Finally, you can replace macros by importing them from different sources. We give you the ability to export and share these macros with your other people in your organization. So you can now import macros directly into your workspace and replace macros that you have that are existing. If you do replace these imported macros, these macros will go ahead and update within the recipes themselves, and you will, similar to how you are using macros before, the logic will just will be executed in your new recipe as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Matt for Photon on Cloud.
All right. If anybody is on here from Google, the Google presentation is very trigger happy. But what I'm going to talk about now is Trifacta Photon. So this is something we've actually had for quite a while, but it was only previously available in our enterprise version, and now it's available on our free trial and the pro version, and some of the versions you get, pretty much almost every version even if you're getting it from like the AWS marketplace. And it's coming very soon in Data Prep by Trifacta, the Google product. So stay tuned because that will be coming here very shortly. But what Trifacta is essentially an execution engine. So it's helpful for two instances. One is running jobs. So typically, if you're running a large scale job, you would run that on Spark or whatever your underlying execution engine is. But for small to medium sized jobs, we have the Photon processing engine, which will process the jobs much quicker than passing that off to a different execution engine. And you can see in the picture we have that it's up to about 1 gigabyte of data. So if your data is less than that, you want to optimize for Photon. And actually in the Trifacta UI, based on the size of your data, we should recommend which engine to use, but you can also manually select that as well. Also for data transformation, so in the browser, we use the Photon execution engine as well. So when you do that real-time preview, it makes that much faster. So when you're interacting with the data and highlighting data, or you're getting the transformation recommendations within when you're building a recipe step, that's what's driving that. So performance within the browser is much better, and you'll see that significant improvement if you are on a version that now has Photon that previously didn't. And as I mentioned, it will be on Data Prep by Trifacta very soon. Okay, also one of the things you are gonna get, before we go into Q&A, you're gonna get a survey following the webinar. So this is for, I think everybody on here is like a very broad audience. There may be people who are new to Trifacta, who are maybe testing out Trifacta, or has been using Trifacta for quite a while and is very experienced. We're hoping in the future to break some of these out to fit different skill sets, but if there's something we didn't cover or that you didn't understand, please let us know, or if there's something you would have liked to have seen, let us know in that survey so we can make these fit better for you in the future. So with that, I am going to kick off some Q&A. One of the questions I'm going to start off with is actually a question we got via email that somebody was asking for us to answer during the Q&A portion of this webinar. So the question is, if a connected data source receives updates after I've created my Trifacta recipes and made them live, will incoming data be added to my new tables based on the Trifacta recipes, or is the data collected from data sources just data from the initial instance of collection? I think the short answer to this is yes, but I'll open it up to Connor and Lou if you want to add some more context to this.
Yeah, Matt, I think your yes covers it well. If your data source, itself can dynamically update. So we see this a lot with relational database sources. Whenever your Trifacta job is triggered, we are going to operate on the most recent version of the data. So, if you've added more records into that table, all of those records will get caught and processed. Now you can get more complex. You can add parameters and really specify very specifically what you want to process. But Matt, I love the short and succinct. Yeah, it works.
Great. Also, yeah, so, and still, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A section of the Zoom and we will answer them. There's another one too that we want to clarify. Somebody was asking about S3, if it's import only. We should clarify that because you can read and write to S3 today. But I think one of the examples we may have used might have been connecting to like a remote S3 connection. but you can read and write to S3, especially if you're on like an Amazon version of Trifacta. I don't know if any, Connor or Lou, you guys want to add anything to that as well?
Nope, that's the that's it.
All right.
That's the answer.
We answered a few questions in already, but we'll also address some of these because it might be good for everybody to hear. One of the questions was, do you plan to support Couchbase? Lou or Connor, I think you gave the answer to this. If either one of you want to take up the answer, provide the same answer you did via the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I guess in general, so this is kind of the start of a much broader connectivity roadmap for us. Our plan is to release a couple of connections every release, and as we start moving more and more into just the broader, I'd say the broader connectivity arena, we're going to try to make these connections available first as early previews, so people can get their hands on it and play around with it, just connecting to the data, and then we're going to support more and more functionality, more and more databases or sources as time goes on. Couchbase is one of the things that we have already heard from, so that is definitely going to be part of the roadmap. I can't promise any timelines as I'm not product management, but at least we should be heading in that direction.
All right, and Lou, while you're already answering questions, I think I got another one for you. Concurrent execution, how it handles in parallel tasks, or how it handles parallel tasks.
Yeah, so like Connor demonstrated, we give you the ability to essentially create tasks in whatever sort of format you kind of want to define it. You can change the logic or the sequence of how you want to define the tasks. So if you create like a branch between multiple tasks and you have multiple tasks on the same sort of line or following a previous task, they will be executed in parallel and concurrently, as long as you define the logic between them as such.
And somebody also asked about the ability to connect to SharePoint, and we're asking for a demonstration. If I remember correctly, I think there's a demonstration of this in our help center, and I think the community as well. You can actually search in the product via our intercom application to find that example. We have it up there to view. And I'm pretty sure we have that, right, Lou?
I have to check. I definitely don't have anything prepared right now to show, unfortunately. But yes, you should be able to find some examples inside of our community.
Yeah, and I believe there's a SharePoint example that you can actually see. We didn't have time to cover it today, but I think that that is available. One other quick question. We got time for a few more. How are macros, plans, etc. managed across dev, test, and prod instances? And feel free, either one of you, to jump in and answer that one.
Yeah, I think I alluded to this when I was talking about import and export of plans, but we typically see people using the import export feature on both plans and macros to take those artifacts out of a dev environment and then re-import them into test or prod. Now I've worked with some customers who have fully automated this process with APIs and Airflow DAGs. So you can get pretty advanced with how you do this type of work. But at the most straightforward level, export from one environment, import to the other.
Okay, there is a question on Photon. Photon limitations less than 1 gigabyte. Any increase in 8.1 version?
Yeah, so I can take this one. Photon is pretty much the same in terms of limitations, but it's more so that by design. We built Photon as an engine to execute for smaller sets of data, and we use it to provide you with the samples and previews that you see inside of the tool on your browser. So we built it to be as lightweight as possible and to make it work as fast as possible for smaller data sets. So we took that same philosophy and we applied the same thing in the cloud. So we're not expecting to make any changes to the engine in terms of like capacity anytime soon. It's more so to kind of help you achieve a quicker and more seamless wrangling experience on the cloud as well as on-prem.
Okay, actually, there's one other question I wanted to touch on because somebody had mentioned learning Trifacta and some of the courses associated with that. Lou, do you want to just give like a quick like overview to everybody on how to access the Trifacta Academy and go through some of the learning modules?
Yeah, so community.trifacta.com is our community website. On there, you should find a link to Trifacta Academy, which is our learning platform. So on there, we have everything from basic introduction to some more advanced trainings to administration. And we're in the middle of updating this for all the latest versions, all the latest clouds as well. So definitely check it out if this is your first time seeing Trifacta. This is the place to start. You can learn everything about Trifacta and also get certified in the process.
And I just was showing live how to log into I already have a login to the Trifacta Academy, but if you join our community and you can access the Academy directly and start going through some of the learning modules. And as we mentioned, we will be updating the Academy as well, but here's just a quick overview of how to access the, oh, and I'm in admin mode for the Academy.
Secret sauce.
Yeah, now everybody knows how it's done. That's funny, being at Trifacta as long as I have, typically you don't have marketing people as an admin to your learning module system, but I was actually a Trifacta user before I came to Trifacta, so I know the product. One last question. Any chance of integrating into S3 the way you do with Google? For example, trigger a planned flow on the new data in a bucket.
So short answer, yes. This is something that the product team is looking into as an in-product native feature. Today, though, this is actually possible. If you use AWS Lambda, you can set that up to watch the S3 bucket and then trigger a Trifacta flow programmatically through the API once that file lands. And that's actually similar to how this is done on Google as well, using cloud functions to trigger Trifacta flows.
All right. That is all of the questions. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you learned about a lot of the new features. And stay in touch because we will be updating you on a lot of things in the coming months. Hopefully we'll see you at the Gaggle Summit in April and in our community as well. Other than that, thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Connor, Lou, and from behind the scenes, Sean Candell and Wei for helping us out. All right. Take care.